InQQ here. In this video I'm going to create a mesh pattern like the one you see, which is kind of like a Celtic knot pattern, and I'm going to create this pattern in Inkscape. So let's get started. Open Inkscape, go to File, Document Properties, and we're going to set our properties for this tutorial. Display units to pixels, and let's come down and remove the page border, and that's about it, and close document properties. Let's come to the circle and ellipses and arcs tool, click on it, and then in the screen click and drag while holding Control to create a perfect circle. Then come to the select and transform objects tool, and let's go to the width and height. First let's set the proportional scaling. When locked, change both width and height at the same proportional. So you want to set that to locked and give it a value of 100. Then I'm going to press Ctrl and roll the mouse wheel up to zoom into the circle, and let's come to Object and Fill and Stroke, and on Stroke Paint I want to set the stroke paint to flat color and make sure that the stroke style is 5 pixels. Make sure that's pixels, it might be millimeters for you. And then come to the fill and set that to no paint. So we want to remove the fill and make it empty there. And then let's come back to the width of the circle. Okay, the width increased when we added the stroke, so I want to bring that back down to 100 pixels. And then click on the circle again and press Ctrl and D at the same time to duplicate it. And then for the duplicate, this one, we want to set the width and height to 50 pixels. Press Enter, and then click and drag over both of the circles to select them, and then come over to Object, Align and Distribute, and make sure it's relative to last selected, and center it vertically and center on the horizontal axis. Once that's done, let's come back to the screen and then click on the larger circle. And first, before we go to the next step, let's come over to our Snap Controls menu. Make sure Enabled Snapping is active, and also Snap Nodes, Paths and Handles is active. Snap Cusp Nodes including rectangles, and Snap Smooth Nodes including quadrants of circles is also active. And then let's come back to the circle and press Ctrl D to duplicate it, then click and drag sideways until it snaps on the smaller circle. Then click on the first circle, the larger one, and press Ctrl D to duplicate it again, and click and drag until it snaps on the small circle again. Then press Shift and click to select the circle on the right. So the one on the left and on the right should be both selected. Then press Ctrl D to duplicate both of them, and then click on them again to reveal the rotation handles, and then drag and rotate while pressing Ctrl to snap at 15-degree angles, and we want to drag until the menu at the bottom here says 60 degrees, and then Control D to duplicate them again, and drag and rotate while holding Control to snap them to 60 degrees. There. And next step, let's click the outer circle on the right and the outer circle on the left, and Control D to duplicate them, and then the small inner circle, shift and click. Let's zoom in really close and click close to the inner edge so that we make sure we select the small inner circle and not the larger circle, and click and drag to bring those 3 circles out. So we've got the 7 circles that form a kind of hexagon left behind, and these 3 circles here. Now let's click on the side, then double click on the circle on the right and the small circular handle that's on the right of the circle. Let's click and drag that and bring it to the square handle on the left here, and then click and drag this and bring it to about somewhere here. And then let's come up to the circle settings, and where it says start, we want to change that to 120, and where it says end, let's change that to 180. Press enter and make sure that the setting is on. Switch to arc on closed shape, and then let's shift and scroll right, click on this circle, and we want to do something similar. Click and drag on the handle. Okay, we'll need to drag this handle instead because we want to come this way, and then click and drag this one to bring it to a similar position as the one we created here. And the values we want for start are 300 and end is 0. Like that. Then let's switch to the select and transform tool. Click and drag outside of the circles. And when all of the circles are selected, let's scroll to zoom out while pressing Ctrl. And then let's change the stroke color to purple. So on the color palette, shift and click purple to change the stroke color. And now let's come over to the snapping tools, and we want to enable snapping on the rotation center. And now let's click and drag and bring this here. Okay, let's control and zoom in, and let's bring those objects to the selection top. So on the menu, click raise to selection top, and then press Ctrl D to duplicate it and drag it here. Ctrl D to duplicate it again. It should snap. Make sure you drop it when it says Object Rotation Center to Object Rotation Center. And then Ctrl D to duplicate it again. And let's bring it to the bottom left circle. And make sure the two rotation centers are snapped together, and then this time we want to flip it horizontally. So click flip, select it horizontally, then Control D to duplicate, shift and drag and drop there, Control D, and let's drag that to the top circle. And when the object rotation centers are snapped, drop it, Control D to duplicate one last time for the last circle, and drop when the object rotation centers snap. And now we don't need the black circles anymore. We can click on them and press delete to delete each of them one by one. And we're left with just a bit of our pattern there. So next step, let's take a rectangle and go to a circle center, click and drag from the top left circle center until it snaps on the bottom right circle center like that. Then let's go to fill and stroke paint and change that to none, and let's change the fill to a flat color, and yeah, that shade of blue should be okay. Then change to the select and transform tool, and let's bring the rectangle to the bottom. For now we're going to bring it back up to the top, but first let's select everything, click and drag over everything like this, and make sure that this border is over everything. Let's scroll out a bit more like this and click and drag over everything like that. Yeah, so let's start from far out just to make sure everything is selected, and then press shift and click on the center of the circle there to deselect the rectangle. Then we want to go to path, object to path, and then path, stroke to path, and then lastly path union, and the result you should get is these all become one object like that. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo this move that I just made, and click the rectangle that's in the background and bring it back to the top, and we're going to create a clip by pressing shift and clicking on our sample for the pattern, and while the rectangle is also selected, then come to object, clip, set, and that's our foundation unit for the pattern. If I press Ctrl D to duplicate it and snap it on there, and then select these two, Ctrl D to duplicate them, you can kind of see our pattern forming like that. And that's how you create a mesh of circles. Hope you like the video, and be sure to comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.